Michael Shore and Jim Avila. A busy week, and I want to get to the latest Supreme Court decision that came down just this morning on these. They call them parolees. These people who are here from Haiti, from Nicaragua, from Venezuela. They came here into the Biden administration and were given a legal protection status for a time. I was running down the statistics on this community. It's more than a half a million people, and they're really a productive community. That is to say, this isn't a community that's ripe with violence. The statistics on their education, quite impressive. I mean, I think it runs probably ahead of what you'd find statistically on the American population in terms of education. But also, they are overwhelmingly employed. And again, my instincts were like this sort of falls into the DACA category, that this is a really productive community that is being victimized by the rhetoric of these horrible immigrants. They come here, it's a community ripe with violence, they are taking our jobs, etc. And now, of course, the Trump administration has targeted them for deportation. Then the SCOTUS decision this morning is that the Trump administration is within its rights to deport these people. I wonder if you can give me a moment on this community and on this strategy, which seems to divert substantially from the strategy that was articulated at the beginning of this administration, which was we're going to go after violent offenders first. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, first of all, I shouldn't say it was we shouldn't say it was a decision, right? They decided to sort of wait and let the appeals courts let it work its way through up to the Supreme Court. But I mean, this is what we're seeing now, and in a sense, if you're a political junkie and you take yourself out of the partisan politics that we've been watching, this is a time like no other, in that we're seeing the courts at work more than we're seeing the Congress at work, and more that we're seeing, so it is, in an objective way, a fairly interesting and I don't know that exciting is the kind of word I would use, but certainly compelling process that we're seeing America go through right now, because you have an administration here that is doing things that are so offensive to so many people, and you're seeing if that can work in the courts, and it's working its way through the courts, and the courts are the great defense against this. But no defense is not porous, and no defense doesn't have its legal background, so that the Supreme Court is saying, well, I'm not so sure about this right now. We're not going to do what the people that are against the administration want to do. We're going to kowtow the administration, but we want to see this again before the appeals court, and if the appeals court makes a ruling, then we'll entertain that perhaps. But these emergency orders are a little different.
Well, these are brown and black people, Michael. If they're white South Africans, they come right in.
Right, they can come. No, I'm not getting to the substance of it. Where you're absolutely right.
And I'm going to get to the substance of it now, because it's very important.
But I don't want to make it seem like I don't think that's important. I'm just saying this is fascinating stuff, and it's also not an absolute ruling.
Well, the problem is, so these are asylum seekers. These are people who have had problems in their home country, and Venezuela was huge riots in the streets, and where Maduro was killing people, and so the Biden administration said, you have special status, you can come in. Haiti was taken over by gangs, and the people there in Haiti were persecuted and killed. And so we allowed them to come in with less paperwork. And so they're in by permission, by special permission from the government. And now that's being ripped away from them. Because they're brown or black, in my opinion. And, we don't want those folks in here. They eat cats and dogs. It's just silly what they have done. And, it's a shame because, this country is supposed to be, a haven for, a haven for the downtrodden. That's what that big statue is in the New York Harbor. And we've got a guy who has no respect for the immigrant. And, if we look into who the immigrants are, at one point, it was the Irish. At one point, it was the Italians. These are people who came in and built this country. The Italians with their stonemasons. Um, these people have built us, and now we're rejecting them. Kim is right in that, in repeating that study, in that there the amount of people who commit crimes in this country who are immigrants is far less than the ones who commit crimes who are native born. And, there's no respect for those statistics. There's no respect for anything. I mean, this business that you were talking about, Mark, and I'm sorry to jump all over, but I had the pleasure of listening for a while. And this business of disrespect for this, for science of any kind. What is it about science that bothers these folks so much? It bothers MAGA so much. They just don't get it. They they want to tear down this country, not make it great again. We're great again. We're great because we've allowed these immigrants in to help build our country, help build our science programs, help go to Harvard and Yale and all these other places, and now they're ripping that all away. It makes no sense.
Well, of course, that's true. And the science programs, by the way, just because you mentioned, are populated in large measure by many of those immigrants who come here to study because of the freedoms and because of the subsidies associated with a lot of these science programs. I mean, it started
And
back
many of them stay and become, our doctors. I mean, go into freaking UCSD and see who's there treating you.
Well,
You know,
also the guys and listeners, everybody, the whole notion of this, that they are focusing on the errors that may happen, or the people. And I shouldn't say errors, the people that are not fleeing legitimately gangs and those sorts of things. And I remember they used to do that with Social Security. You'd find someone who was abusing the Social Security system. Well, you don't blow up the whole system because someone's abusing it. You punish that person. And that's what these courts are in great measure about, making sure that there is legitimate reason and hearing the cases. And that's why they're parolees, so they can come
and
back.
that's why they're supposed to be due process.
And that's
And
why
then
exactly, that's why they're supposed to be. I did a series in Central America covering immigration back in, well, it was what, 2021, I guess. So Biden had just taken office, and Harris was down in Guatemala, and we sat down with some gangsters. We sat down with people who had to have their faces blurred, talking to us about what they would do to women and how they would extort people. So the people would go out and make whatever pittance they would make in the fields or in factories, come back, and there'd be somebody waiting for them to take their money from them by force. And so this is real, and it's legitimate, and it's coming not just from the people who are complaining about it. It was to us, to our cameras, it was admitted that that's what they do. That's how they make their living, and that's how they control villages and towns. It's not everyone, and not everyone at the border is fleeing that, right? They're looking for opportunity, and they're using that as an excuse. But it's real, and all the things you said. I know, Jim, you were about to say, go to a doctor and see who treats you. It's somebody from someplace else in many, many cases.
the border is much different than what we're talking about here.
It is,
And,
but it's about these people who are here as parolees, though. It's the
yes,
same.
but I'm not arguing with your point. I'm just saying, I'm amplifying the fact that the border is totally different from these asylum seekers who come through getting visas in special programs, and then they're there.
Yeah.
And instead of and we Biden, just before he left. Now I know that I'm not going to defend the fact that he was not that he let too many people in. Okay, that he just opened the borders. Um, there should be programs for agriculture that are more widespread. There should be programs for medicine and for science, and there were programs, and should be programs for folks who are escaping persecution, and all those things were in place. And the border uh, crossings went way down under Biden, under the last year of Biden, because he finally woke up. but or somebody woke up. Not sure he ever woke up, but
By the
anyway,
way, very few people would agree that he woke up at the end of his term.
yeah, somebody did, but it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And that those things are so important to realize the differential, and they don't. They're all criminals. They're all bad people. They came here to rape your daughters, and that's bullshit. It just is bullshit.
Mark, you're muted. Guy complains about my mic.
Yeah, and this on today, so it's all a little bit different.
He's
I
sick.
wanted to get clarity, though, on something that you said, Michael, because you had mentioned that the Supreme Court didn't really make a decision. They said let the lower courts decide. I would just take issue in the sense that they lifted the lower court order. The lower court order was to keep the humanitarian parole protections in place, and the Supreme Court said no.
Right. The lower, but they're saying also that it needs to go to a court before it goes to the Supreme Court. So it wasn't talking about the Constitution. There was actually nobody. There was no signature to this, this order.
No, that's right. That's right. There was no. They don't explain their reasoning. They don't do it. It was an emergency decision. That's right.
Yeah.
But there may be a process by which the rest of these people can be deported or will be deported. But that process has now been permitted. That is to say, they have lifted the protections on those parolees such that can go on.
Oh no, right? It's not good news by any means, but there's no permanence to it necessarily because they're
Now, quickly to the tariffs. The tariffs have. It was a wild day. Yeah, where the Mark's volume is too low. Hang on a second, because I am on remote. Albert, can you do something about my volume? Can I do something about my volume? Can anyone do?
I'm on it.
Oh, you're on it. Okay, thank you. The tariff situation it was a day of true bizarre rulings, only in the sense that you had two courts essentially saying the president wasn't within his constitutional boundaries in raising these tariffs, in applying these tariffs, in enforcing these tariffs. And then you had another federal court in the 11th hour yesterday saying, actually, these tariffs can stand. That for the moment anyway, and this to the point that maybe this is a temporary situation, for the moment, these tariffs will be permitted because the appeals court essentially trumped, if you pardon the expression, the two other courts that were involved in that decision.
And now it's got to go to the Supreme Court. So, the problem with all that, Mark, as you know, and Michael knows, is that it's the instability, and businesses do not like instability. They do not like trying to guess what's going to be happening. They have to order 3 months or 2 months in advance, and they can't because it changes every day. And that's just terrible for our economy, and we're not doing well.
It's interesting that Wall Street does sort of shrug about this stuff now, Michael. It's as though they kind of feel as though the tariff thing is, when I say the tariff thing, I mean the inability to make a final decision on tariffs, what they will be, is sort of baked into the future. Jim's right, of course, that you need to plan out. So there's I haven't heard any CEO or leader of business who is for the kind of policy that changes by the hour. But by the same token, it doesn't seem like, if you watch Wall Street, like it seems as though they've become quickly accustomed to this.
Yeah, they have, and of course they know more about how to bake these things in than certainly than I do, and it's a part of how. I guess when you learn the ways of banking, you bake those things in automatically. The prices, the futures prices, right? You're betting on that, and in a sense, I guess they've adjusted to the way these tariffs are. That reporter who asked the question about Taco Tuesday, right? And Trump, the Trump chickening out. While it was a funny question and it gave us some sound bites, that's sort of the truth. That people don't really believe that this is going to go all the way. And then he posts something on Truth Social that makes people think differently. But Wall Street knows better that it's going to get reversed in some way in a day or two. But what Jim was saying is true, is the people that run businesses and small businesses, they don't know how to behave. They don't know how to make their businesses react to these tariffs. And then, of course, then China says Trump says China's breaking a tariff truce today on Truth Social, saying that they've totally violated their agreement. So much for being Mr. Nice Guy, he said. But China's saying this is ridiculous anyway. Like, we're not going to do the truce because you keep changing every day. We don't know what's coming at us. So there's a lot of bewilderment, both on Wall Street, small businesses, and even on our allies and our adversaries.
You know, one of the things that is overwhelmingly evident is the corruption of this administration. The sale of everything from pardons to tariff policy. It's an extraordinary thing
to coins, right? To Bitcoin, to
right. Well, that's all part of an act. That's
yeah.
just access, right? Yeah,
Right.
that's access to the president. So, and the meme coins, I'm glad you mentioned it, because the meme coins, just to remind everyone, they have no intrinsic value whatsoever. So that we could have a special Michael Shure, Jim Avila, Mark Thompson coin, and we could issue 100 of them. And if there were 200 people who wanted to buy the coin would go up in value. But there's no other way in which that coin can be used. It's a collectible. Right. And so the meme coin, which is just that which I described, has been the source of tremendous income for this president. He had the dinner with all the cryptocurrency dudes, the leading purchasers of that coin. But beyond that, he has managed to wrestle from Vietnam the green light on his resort there. They've waived all of the environmental discussions around it. They are displacing a bunch of residents in the area of Vietnam where that resort will go in. That was all in immediate response to the 46% tariff that they'd placed on Vietnamese goods. So this, in addition to all the other ways that he's been moneyed, the Jeff Bezos $28 million for Melania Trump in that documentary, that money goes right to her. This Trump crew is open for business in a way I've never seen before. But here's my question. Why doesn't that land with the American public in a stronger way? My sense is that the electorate feels as though, all politicians are corrupt. It's kind of what Mike Johnson said. At least he's doing it out in front. And because he's doing it, in plain sight, it couldn't be that bad. Jim Avila?
Well, I love my brother. My brother gave me a kidney. But he lives in Texas. And what he always tells me when I bring up Trump is all politicians are the same, and that they all lie and they all cheat and they're all corrupt. The problem, what he doesn't see and what MAGAs don't see and the rest of the public don't see, is that this is to a scale that has never been done. It's the scale of what's happening. He has come in here, he just got $1 billion plane. What is that? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know what we're going to do about it unless we vote him out. And I think it's too early. I think I said this last week. It's too early to pick an issue like that and, the corruption and make the huge deal out of it. It is a huge deal, but there's no elections that are on right now that are really going to hurt him. We need to organize. We need to do what Bernie Sanders and AOC are doing, which is pointing this out to the public and keeping it hot or warm. But in the end, it's going to have to be closer to the election, I think.
And further to that, it's you have somebody who is, a lot of the politicians, and I disagree with your brother, and I'll love him forever for giving you a kidney, so I won't disagree with him that much. but
he's wrong. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, that he's wrong, and that not, first of all, not all politicians are corrupt, and the scale of this is like something we've never seen before. We only hear about the corrupt ones, and many of them do. They all have egos, which doesn't mean they're corrupt. But, you surround yourself with politicians, you're going to have some public servants at the dinner table and people who are not necessarily corrupt. That said, when you look at what Trump is doing, the really irksome thing about it is that he doesn't care. And so he's not bothered by the criticism of his own corruption, right?
He's lived in the corruption. He was a failure as a businessman.
Yeah.
And this is just continuing on a big scale.
Right. And so he does it in such a brazen way. in the Oval Office, which we've never seen. We've seen mayors do it. We've seen senators and congressmen and people that are taking
God, have you
bribes.
seen the Oval Office, Michael?
Yeah.
It's just
Well, yeah.
I used to go in there. You know, I'm sure you've been in there. I used to go in there, and there was a sense of respect. You know, there
Yeah.
was a sense of this is our country. When I walked into the White House every day, down the where the what they call Pebble Beach, where
Yeah.
the broadcasters broadcast from, and
Where I was
in
standing
and then and
while
yeah,
you were in the Oval Office. Yeah.
and then into the and then into the press briefing room. There's this kid from East LA,
Yeah.
and the amount of respect that I gave it, it would bring tears. And this guy is just, he's just stomping all over it, and it's just terrible. It's just terrible what he's done. The gold fixtures. I used to hate to stay at the Trump Hotel. ABC had a deal. So when you flew into New York, and it was relatively close, you'd stay at the Trump Hotel. Fortunately, when he became a politician, they stopped that deal. But it was bad then, and it's terrible now. Every fixture was gold. The toilet was gold. It was
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. And not only that, he also now uses it to dress down world leaders. We've
Yeah,
never seen that before. We've seen him with We've seen presidents with adversaries saying we have our disagreements, but we're going to be working the next day or so to iron some of them out. You don't
I
see
thought
them.
the South African guy was very good.
Yeah, he
I thought
was. He was very, very
I wish I had a plane to give you.
right.
Um, and
Yeah, yeah,
and he was defending his country and defending it well, and kind of shut Trump up.
yeah, yeah. And I thought when he was talking to Zelensky, and then Vance chimed in, and then a reporter from that One America News asks a
Yeah,
question about Vance's dress. Well, Elon Musk
about
wears baseball
Zelensky's
caps.
dress.
Yeah, Zelensky's dress, and Elon Musk wears baseball caps and sweatsuits. It's all crazy. It's just
Yeah.
and so not only
I
the
mean, we
really
should
poignant,
wear something respectful when you go into the White House. Even
yeah,
our camera people had
right,
a dress code to
yeah,
wear suit and tie.
right.
And they're usually the grungiest people on earth. But you know, they they were respectful.
Yeah.
There is a stunning, I've only been to the White House once, or maybe twice, but there is a stunning sense of the White House institution and history that is sobering when you go
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
they have truly dry cleaned the place of that. I mean, they are open for business. As Jim says, it's a gilded house now. And
Yeah.
there's a system of patronage well in place. I'd suggest the tariffs reinforce that system of patronage. I mentioned the Vietnam thing; it goes through the Middle Eastern countries and beyond. So the business of the presidency has changed radically and has been corrupted radically. I guess what I was getting at, and you guys have both remarked on
From a guy from Queens.
this is, yeah, right, exactly. For a guy
Right.
from Queens who talks about his success in real estate, and of course he was gifted a huge. He's really never made money with a successful business until the presidency. The presidency has given him the successful business that he always wanted.
Yeah.
Right. As someone once said, who loses money on a casino?
No, exactly. The multiple bankruptcies, and he was a laughingstock in New York. You know this, Michael and Jim. I mean, he was really. It's one of the reasons that people didn't take Donald Trump seriously as a political threat, because he was just such a profound failure and
He
a
was a
wannabe.
playboy,
Yes,
playing
exactly.
with his dad's money.
Yeah.
And losing his dad's money.
Yeah.
Kid
So I
from
mean, it's the
Queens
old
wanted
phrase,
to be accepted. Yep.
born on third base and thinks he's hit a triple. So but
Yeah.
now he's legitimately rich because the American people have allowed him to corrupt the office in the way that he has. But I think it's interesting that this corruption doesn't land yet, and we'll see to what extent. I mean, the thing that people care about probably is mostly their pocketbook, and then secondarily, this immigration issue has been a winner for him. The more it stays in the news, and the more
Yeah.
he defaults to it. It's a rhetorical default constantly. these immigrants, they opened borders. When I got here, the borders were open. Now they're closed. This is a winner for him. It lands cleanly. So I don't know that the corruption moves the meter at all, sadly.
Unfortunately, what we heard during the elections, especially during 2016 from the general public, was, yeah, he's a fraudulent business person. He's a rich guy, and I want to be a rich guy. And how he got to be rich doesn't matter.
Right.
And I want to be like him. And that was unfortunate. And I think a lot of people in polling said that they were voting for him because this is America, and America is in my grasp. I can get to it. And that's unfortunate that they don't believe they have to get to it in a legitimate way. I lost a lot of faith and reputation on the fact that he won that election. I had so much faith in the American people, and maybe it'll come back in the next election in 2028. But so far, it hasn't.
It's interesting that you mentioned this. So here, MJ Daniel says too many Americans do not care unless it hurts them personally. I mean, there is some truth to that. And look,
but it is hurting them personally.
Yeah, no.
Look at your 401k.
Sure.
Yeah.
But this speaks to how the country has changed. I learned, and we all learned a lot about the American people in the last presidential election. The degree to which young men came out and voted for Trump. And Jim, you went down sort of the demographic breakdowns that were surprising, that many in the black community voted for Trump. Many in the Latino community voted for Trump. It was an odd kind of sparking of interest and of activism from what was clearly kind of a wannabe strongman. He came across...
And it was bad memories. They had terrible memory. They thought that the economy under Trump was good.
It was revisionist, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the
Michael,
problem. They believe the lies.
Yeah. And he says them over and over and over again. And he's proved that axiom to be true, is that if you say it over and over and over again, a good many people will believe it.
Right. I don't know, and I know that we go through. There they are. I mean, that's the kind of the MAGA bro setup. That's I think that's Dana White in the foreground for those listening, and that may this is
the Nelk Boys
kind of,
podcast. That's them. Right there.
Oh, is that there it is, and going on those podcasts was good business for Trump. I don't know that he needed it, but it sure didn't hurt, and in a close election. To show up on those podcasts really matter. I also think that the Democrats fumble the ball a bit. I mean, joy and hope.
They do, but there's no way. I mean, I think what Jim's saying is that even Democrats fumbling the ball, the worst thing that the Democrats did should still have made it so that Donald Trump isn't elected, is what I'm saying. I'm
sorry, we have Joe Biden to blame for that. I'm on the...
Well, Jim, I love you, and I don't know. There's nothing that proved to me in looking at the election afterward that any other candidate could have beaten Trump with the dynamics that had been set up, and we'll never know that.
If he would have dropped out, they would have clobbered him. Somebody would have clobbered him. Gavin Newsom would have clobbered him.
I don't know that. I just don't know that, and
I think so.
I would love to think that, but and I don't, we just won't know. But
he only got 49% of the vote.
The aggravating part about this is that what he does doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter to people that are elected to the Senate and to Congress, and that people that are so afraid of their own constituents. That to me is what, the people who are elected to lower offices, not pushing back against this corruption. They're talking about, we have to have ethics committee for the Supreme Court. We have to have an ethics committee for our own House of Representatives and Senate. But where's the ethics committee for the White House, right? I mean, where does somebody look at that? And that to me is a really frustrating. I think this is a real.
It used to be a GAO, but they don't do that anymore.
They don't do it anymore. And Trump says whatever the GAO is saying doesn't matter, right? I mean, the Government Accounting Office, he refutes what they say all the time, right? And so there has to be a way of pushing back against that, and that the people didn't do it. is one thing, but the fact that the Congress hasn't done it and people in his own party haven't done
Yeah,
it.
the only way to do it, Michael, and I think you probably agree, is through an election.
Right.
And hopefully
Absolutely.
the destruction of the economy and the cruelty of immigration deportation will we'll see a better end. I'm not like Mark. I'm not totally signed off on the American people, but I'm pretty close to getting to where Mark is. So
Well, it's sadly, I think there's more evidence every day for my grim outlook on the American people. Guys, we got to wrap. You guys are both so generous with your time. I've really enjoyed this. Michael, thank you again. Thanks for filling in occasionally here, and you're really great in the days you put together, man. Great guests and great conversation. And Jim, you're so wonderful. Even as you endure health challenges and all the rest, you always show up for us, and I just love you to death. Thank you so much, pal.
let me just say, go Cubs. Okay, look, they're ahead 4-0. They're in first place. They have a guy who's going to be an MVP and has 3 names that I can only remember 2 of.
I can't believe there's baseball in Chicago. That's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, right.
You go. Listen, aren't you late for your hockey game? All right. Thank you, guys. Michael Shure and Jim Avila. See you soon.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.